Billionaire said, "I don't shake hands with staff." Moments. Later, the black woman pulled $10 M backing. "Hello, everyone. Before we begin today's video, I need your help. We've noticed that the channel is losing traction, and subscribing is one of the best ways you can help us. It's quick, free, and allows us to continue bringing you great content. Your support means everything. Let's keep this channel growing collectively. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's get back to the story. Get out of my office. The words hit the air like a door slam. Sharp, certain, practiced. James didn't even look up from his desk when he said it. He leaned back in his chair, casual arrogance wrapped in a suit. The kind of laugh that fills a room because it expects no echo. Across the table, Amina Cole stood still. Her briefcase rested against her leg, one hand extended for a handshake that never came. He thought she was staff coordinator, maybe a mistake in scheduling. "Did you hear me?" he asked, smiling wider. "I said, I heard you." Her voice was calm, even. She lowered her hand, not in defeat, but in precision like setting down a blade. For a beat, no one spoke. The hum of the overhead light buzzed like a warning. From the corner, a junior assistant froze mid-note, glancing between them. Amina looked around the office slowly. Polished steel, cold blue walls, 3 framed posters about discipline and drive. Her company's old slogans still hanging where she left them years ago. "I like what you've done with the place," she said. James chuckled. "Thanks. We've been trying to erase the last owner's mistakes." That was when she smiled. Not the kind of smile people give when they're amused, the kind that says, "You just confirmed everything I needed to know." She stepped forward, placed her folder on the desk, and said it quietly enough for the room to lean in. "That's funny, I own this." The sound of those 4 words rearranged the silence. James blinked. The assistant's pen stopped moving. Even the hum of the light seemed to hesitate. Amina didn't gloat. She didn't raise her voice. She simply looked him in the eye and let the weight of truth land where arrogance had stood. James tried to laugh again, but it cracked halfway. What do you mean, own?" Before he could finish, she slid a single document across the desk. Letterhead. Signatures. Transfer of ownership. Effective date. This morning. His face drained color in slow motion. Amina straightened her jacket, calm as gravity. "I came to introduce myself," she said softly. "But you made that unnecessary." Then she turned toward the window, the city skyline reflecting in the glass, her reflection at the center of it. Power quiet enough to echo. For a moment, no one moved. The air in the room seemed to fold in on itself. Amina's words still hung there, quiet, steady, absolute. James blinked once, twice, as if hoping reality would reset itself. Then he laughed, but it sounded forced brittle around the edges. "Okay," he said, waving his hand like the joke had gone too far. "Who put you up to this? HR? The board?" Amina didn't answer. She just stood there, calm as a closed door. When silence stays that long, it starts to feel like judgment. The junior assistant, mid-20s, nervous, holding a tablet, finally spoke. "Sir, the ownership transfer came through this morning." He turned the screen so everyone could see. A company-wide announcement email glowed in the light. Subject line: "Welcome back, founder." James's smile collapsed in slow motion. He looked from the screen to Amina, searching for some loophole in the truth. There wasn't one. "You can't just walk in here and—" "I didn't," she said quietly. "I walked back." Her tone wasn't angry. It was final, like a door closing behind a storm. From the corner, the HR manager rose halfway from her chair. "Miss Cole," she said carefully, "we had no idea you were returning today." Amina nodded. "I know. That's why I came unannounced." She walked toward the window, tracing her fingers lightly along the conference table. Not to inspect, but to remember. Every decision, every late night, every idea that built the company she once lost. Now reclaimed. Behind her, James muttered, "This is ridiculous." His voice cracked on the last word. He was still standing, but the authority had already left him. Amina turned back. "Leadership isn't about volume, Mr. Reed. It's about value." He said nothing. The assistant lowered his eyes. Even the hum of the air conditioner sounded like it was waiting for permission to breathe. Amina placed her briefcase on the table and opened it. Inside a single folder, she slid it forward. "Transition plan," she said. "Effective immediately." The HR manager stepped closer, hands trembling slightly as she accepted it. James stared at the folder like it might rewrite itself. Amina gathered her composure, adjusted the sleeve of her jacket. No rush, no victory pose, just certainty settling into place. She looked at the team faces, half curious, half guilty. "You don't need to apologize," she said softly. "Just remember what silence looks like when respect leaves the room." Then she turned toward the door. Each step sounded deliberate, not loud, not rushed, just the rhythm of authority returning home. As she reached the threshold, she paused, glancing back once. "Meeting resumes at 9 tomorrow," she said. "Same room, new tone." And then she was gone. The door clicked shut behind her, leaving the echo of calm power in her wake, the kind that doesn't shout to be heard. The door hadn't even cooled from closing before the room broke into noise, not loud, uneasy. A collection of whispers, half-finished sentences, and the sound of certainty collapsing. James stood frozen behind the desk, his jaw tightened, a man replaying the last 5 minutes like a bad dream he couldn't edit. He stared at the contract folder still lying there, untouched, as if ignoring it might undo its signature. Across the table, the HR manager exhaled for the first time. She pressed a hand to her chest, whispering to herself, "She's back." The assistant nodded slowly, and she didn't even raise her voice. That line hung in the air, a truth too clean to argue with. One by one, people began to move again. The intern collected his things silently. 2 analysts exchanged looks that said, "We just watched a masterclass in composure." Someone muttered, "I'd have lost it if that were me." Another replied, "That's why you're not her." James's phone buzzed incoming call. The caller ID read, "Board chair." He didn't answer. Instead, he turned off the screen, pocketed the device, and sat down heavily. For the first time in years, the chair didn't feel like his. Through the glass wall, the city pulsed, distant and indifferent. Inside, a new kind of silence settled, not awkward, accountable. The assistant, gathering courage, spoke again. "Should we, prepare the 9 a.m. meeting?" No one replied. So he did what good employees do when leadership fails. He took initiative. He sent the memo himself. Subject, "Team meeting, tomorrow 9 a.m. Note, attendance required. Agenda, leadership transition." Before hitting send, he paused, then added one more line. "Respect is policy." He hit send. Outside, the hallway buzzed faintly with rumors already spreading. Someone from accounting whispered, "She really bought the whole company back?" "Yes," came the answer, and she did it quietly. A ripple, small at first, began to move through every department. Emails forwarded, texts sent, a growing realization that the person they'd underestimated now owned the ground beneath their feet. James finally spoke, voice low, almost to himself. "She planned this." Enderfort, the HR manager, looked at him. "She didn't have to," she said. "She just waited for the moment you'd prove her right." He looked down at his reflection in the polished table. For once, he didn't like what he saw. As the office lights dimmed into evening mode, the reflection of the skyline shimmered against the glass again. The same city she'd looked toward minutes ago. But this time, it didn't mirror arrogance. It mirrored change. Down in the lobby, Amina stepped into the elevator, alone, calm, scrolling through her phone. A message from her assistant appeared. "Transition confirmed. All departments informed." She typed back, "Good. Tomorrow we start rebuilding respect." The elevator doors closed quiet, certain, deliberate. Upstairs, the ripple kept spreading. It didn't sound like chaos. It sounded like order returning to its rightful owner. Morning sunlight spilled through the glass walls, soft but uninvited. The conference room that had echoed arrogance the day before now carried a quieter weight. Name tags had been replaced. The folder from yesterday sat at the center of the table, unopened, but undeniable. At 8:59, the team filed in one by one. No chatter, no performance, just the muted shuffle of people suddenly aware of how their silence sounded. James arrived last. He hesitated at the door, straightened his tie, then stepped inside. No one greeted him. He took his usual seat, the one that no longer belonged to him. At exactly 9, the door opened. Amina Cole walked in. No entourage, no presentation slides, no theatrics. Just her, a notebook, and a sense of stillness that made the air stand at attention. "Good morning," she said. Her tone wasn't warm or cold, it was clear. The kind of clarity that doesn't ask permission to be respected. No one spoke. A few heads nodded. Even the air conditioner seemed to hum softer. She placed her notebook on the table, opened it, and looked around the room. Yesterday was revealing, she began. Not because of what was said, but because of what wasn't. Eyes lowered. James looked down, fingers gripping his pen like an anchor. When people forget the value of respect, she continued, they also forget what leadership is for. It's not a hierarchy, it's a mirror. Okay. She paused, letting the words land. I'm not here to punish anyone. I'm here to reset the tone. Because the culture you tolerate is the culture you become. A murmur of agreement rippled softly through the room. She turned toward James. Their eyes met. He braced for humiliation, but it didn't come. You built systems, she said. You kept operations moving. That takes skill. I recognize that. But leadership isn't about keeping things moving, it's about knowing why they move. Yeah. He swallowed hard. Understood. His voice barely carried, but it was honest. Amina nodded once, not forgiveness, but acknowledgement. Then she addressed everyone. From this moment, respect isn't optional. It's policy. Every voice matters, every mistake teaches, and every assumption gets checked. She looked at the intern sitting near the end of the table. He straightened, surprised to be noticed. Yesterday, she said, you spoke when it was uncomfortable. That's leadership. He blinked, stunned. I just told the truth. Amina smiled slightly. Exactly. The room felt lighter, as if oxygen had been reintroduced. She closed her notebook. One last thing, she said. Power isn't proven when you win. It's proven when you stay composed. Then she stood. Let's build something better. Applause didn't follow. What followed was silence, respectful, awake, real. As she left the room, the sunlight shifted again, catching her reflection in the glass. Yesterday, that reflection looked like defiance. Today, it looked like leadership. The meeting ended, but no one left right away. People lingered not out of obligation, but out of awakening. Something had shifted in the air, and everyone felt it. James sat still, hands clasped, eyes unfocused. He looked like a man who'd just seen his own reflection for the first time and didn't like what it showed. Around him, quiet conversations began, the kind that sounded less like gossip and more like learning. Amina watched from her office down the hall. Through the glass, she could see the change taking root, hesitant but real. Respect wasn't a memo. It was behavior repeating itself. Her assistant stepped in. Board wants a debrief at 2, he said. She nodded. Tell them I'll be there. He hesitated. And James? Amina looked toward the conference room. He was still sitting there, alone now. She closed her notebook and stood. I'll talk to him. The hallway felt different this morning. Same floor, same walls, but a new kind of gravity. People met her gaze now. Some smiled. Some looked ashamed. She acknowledged them all the same way, a simple nod that said, I see you. When she reached the conference room, James rose immediately. Miss Cole, sit, she said gently. He obeyed. The tone wasn't command. It was grace. I owe you an apology, he started, words tumbling fast. I misjudged you. I misjudged a lot of people. And yesterday, Amina held up a hand. You don't need to explain what I already saw. He exhaled, relief mixed with regret. I thought leadership meant control, he admitted. It does, she said, but not over people, over yourself. He looked at her, uncertain. She continued, everyone gets blinded by success at some point. The question is whether you stop to see who's holding the light. The line landed with quiet weight. James nodded slowly, eyes fixed on the table. I want to stay, he said. I want to learn. Amina smiled faintly. Then start by listening. She stood, walking toward the window. Outside, the city glowed under morning haze, imperfect, alive, rebuilding itself one sound at a time. Tomorrow, she said, still facing the glass, we'll hold an open session. No titles, no hierarchy. Everyone speaks, especially the ones who never get invited to the mic. James frowned. You really think they'll talk? Amina turned back. They will, once they know someone's listening. He nodded, the first real understanding in his eyes. Amina gathered her things. At the door, she paused. Leadership isn't about never falling, she said. It's about standing up differently. She left the room, and James stayed behind, not defeated, but aware. He looked at the empty chairs around the table and saw something he hadn't before. Possibility. Outside, Amina walked past a group of employees in the lobby. They straightened instinctively, unsure whether to speak. She stopped, smiled, and said, Good morning, team. It was simple, ordinary, and somehow revolutionary. For the first time in a long while, the office didn't feel tense. It felt awake. And that was how rebuilding began, not with noise, but with listening. The next morning, the entire company gathered in the atrium. No stage, no podium, just a circle of chairs beneath the high skylight where sunlight scattered like new beginnings. Amina stood in the center, no microphone, no script, just presence. "Thank you for coming," she began. "Today isn't a meeting. It's a conversation." The room shifted. Some employees exchanged uncertain glances. Others leaned forward, curious. Amina gestured around them. "For years, this company grew fast," she said. "But somewhere along the way, we forgot what made it worth growing. People stopped feeling seen. Ideas started coming from the same few voices. That ends today." She took a seat among them, same level, no hierarchy. "I'll start by listening," she said. "Who wants to go first?" Silence stretched thin at first. Then, from the back, a voice spoke. A young designer stood, clutching a notebook. "I've been here 3 years," she said quietly. "I love this place. But sometimes I feel invisible, like the best ideas are only heard when they come from the loudest person in the room." A few heads nodded. James, sitting 2 rows behind, lowered his eyes. Amina nodded slowly. "Thank you. You're not invisible. You're the reason this place exists." Another hand rose, an older engineer. He cleared his throat. "I stayed because I believed in what we built. But lately, I stopped recognizing it. The pressure, the silence, the fear of saying the wrong thing." His voice cracked. "It wasn't like that when you started this company." Amina looked at him not as a boss, but as someone who understood exhaustion. "Then we rebuild it," she said. "Together." The room softened. More hands went up one after another. Stories poured out. Frustration, burnout, missed credit, quiet dreams shelved for politics. Each one landed like a confession. Each one met with the same steady response. Heard. And with every voice, the space changed. The air that used to feel sharp with ambition now felt full human. Amina didn't take notes. She memorized faces. Because leadership, she believed, wasn't about recording data, it was about remembering people. After nearly 2 hours, she stood again. "Thank you," she said. "You didn't just speak, you trusted. Now it's my turn." She took a breath. "I made mistakes too. I built something strong, but not always kind. Today proved that strength without empathy breaks." Her voice trembled slightly, not with weakness, but truth. "We can be better. And when we are, the world won't need a press release to notice." The atrium was silent but alive. James looked around at the team he used to command. For the first time, he didn't see employees. He saw equals. Amina smiled faintly. "This is how companies grow up," she said. "Not when they scale profits, but when they scale respect." Applause rose, not rehearsed, not polite, real. It sounded like forgiveness learning to breathe again. Amina looked up at the skylight. The sunlight had shifted warmer now, open, unfiltered. It touched her face, and for the first time, she let herself smile fully. Because this wasn't about reclaiming power anymore. It was about sharing it. By the next week, the building didn't sound the same. The echo of rushed footsteps and clipped orders had softened into something human. People greeted each other in the halls again, brief smiles, real ones. It wasn't perfect, but it was different. Amina noticed it first thing every morning, small signs that meant everything. A good job left on a post-it. A door held open instead of slammed shut. Ideas written on whiteboards signed by teams, not titles. Change didn't arrive with fireworks. It arrived like dawn slowly, then all at once. James was learning, too. He no longer led meetings from the head of the table. He sat among the team, listening more than speaking. One afternoon, Amina passed by his office and caught him asking an intern, "What do you think?" and meaning it. Later, when she stopped by, he looked up, half embarrassed. "I figured it's time I learned the art of shutting up." Amina smiled. "It's underrated." Ugh. They laughed, not awkwardly, but as colleagues rebuilding trust brick by brick. The next few days blurred into motion. Team workshops, open feedback sessions, realignment of departments. But this time, it wasn't chaos. It was collaboration. Every voice carried a little more weight, and every silence held less fear. One Friday afternoon, Amina's assistant entered with an envelope. "From the Leadership Integrity Council," he said. Amina raised a brow. "What do they want?" He grinned. "You've been invited to speak at their annual conference. Topic: Power without noise." Amina opened the letter. Inside, a handwritten note read, "We watched your turnaround. It's not often we see leadership practiced with quiet conviction. The world needs that story. She stared at the words for a long moment, then set the letter down gently. Tell them yes, she said. But make it clear I'm not going to talk about power. I'm going to talk about people. That evening, she stayed late in her office. Lights dim, the city glowing through the glass. Below, employees filtered out one by one, laughing, chatting, carrying laptops under their arms instead of burdens on their backs. James knocked on her door before leaving. Heading out? She asked. He nodded. I was thinking, next week, could we do another open session? Maybe make it regular? Amina smiled. That's not my decision anymore. It's ours. He paused, realizing she meant it. Then he said quietly, Thank you for not firing me. Amina looked up from her notes. Growth is the goal, James, not punishment. He nodded, then left. Alone again, she looked at the city lights flickering against the windows, reflections of hundreds of offices, thousands of people trying to get leadership right. She whispered to herself, maybe this is how you build legacy, not with headlines, but with habits. Her phone buzzed. A message from the intern. Thank you for listening. Amina typed back. Thank you for speaking. The screen dimmed. The room quieted. And somewhere between the hum of the city and her own heartbeat, Amina realized, the company wasn't just recovering, it was evolving. The ballroom was enormous chandeliers, cameras, rows of executives dressed in certainty. Every seat filled, every eye expectant. It was the annual Leadership with Integrity conference, where success stories were usually told in numbers, not lessons. But today, the story was different. Backstage, Amina adjusted her mic. No script. Just a single note card that read, Power without noise. An organizer peeked in. You're up in 2 minutes, he said. Amina nodded. Thank you. She stood still, breathing slowly. 10 years ago, she had walked out of a company she built because it forgot its purpose. Last month, she walked back in and rebuilt it from silence outward. That was what she came to share. When the MC announced her name, the applause was polite, curious, not convinced. She walked onto the stage without hurry. Her heels tapped lightly against the wood floor, each step deliberate, grounded. Then she looked up, and the room went still. Good afternoon, she began. Her voice was calm, unamplified by ego. When people talk about leadership, they often talk about power, the kind that fills rooms, moves markets, wins headlines. A pause. But the power that lasts doesn't shout. The audience leaned in. Last month, she continued, I walked into a meeting where I was mistaken for staff. I didn't correct anyone, not right away, because sometimes silence teaches louder than anger ever could. A few faces in the front row froze. They knew the viral clip. It wasn't about humiliation, Amina said. It was about reflection. We live in a world that moves so fast, it forgets to look in the mirror. Her tone softened. I learned that the loudest person in the room isn't always the leader, and the quietest isn't always the least powerful. You could feel the shift, the room no longer watching, but listening. Power, she said, isn't proven when you win. It's proven when you can pause, when you can let grace lead before your voice does. The camera lights blinked, phones recorded. Even the staff at the back had stopped moving. She smiled slightly. Leadership isn't about having the mic. It's about knowing when to hand it to someone else. That line landed like truth disguised as simplicity. Applause began softly, then built. Wave after wave. Amina waited for it to fade before closing. When I left my company years ago, I thought legacy meant being remembered. Now I know it means leaving others stronger when you're gone. She took a breath. Power without noise. Grace without permission. That's the future I'm investing in. When she stepped off the stage, the applause didn't stop. People stood. Not because they were impressed, but because they understood. Backstage, the organizer looked awestruck. That wasn't a speech, he said. That was a mirror. Amina smiled, setting her note card down. It always is. She walked toward the exit, lights dimming behind her, the echo of applause chasing her steps. Outside, the city gleamed under the afternoon sun, endless, alive, imperfect. Somewhere inside it, someone else was being underestimated. And maybe now, they'd remember her words before reacting. Because real leadership didn't need to shout. It just needed to show up. By morning, the video had traveled farther than Amina ever imagined. One clip, a minute and 12 seconds long, the line, Power without noise, had been replayed over 2 million times before sunrise. People weren't just watching, they were listening. It started small, a few comments, quiet gratitude from young professionals. Then it spread. Teachers shared it in classrooms. Executives forwarded it to team. Even a flight attendant reposted it with the caption, "Grace travels faster than sound." Amina's inbox overflowed not with praise, but with reflection. Messages began the same way. "I watched your talk," and ended with stories about people standing up for others, about workplaces deciding to change tone instead of policy. She scrolled through them in her office, humbled. Every message felt like a conversation she didn't know she'd started. Her assistant entered, holding a tablet. "You're trending worldwide," he said. Amina chuckled softly. That was never the plan. He smiled. Maybe that's why it worked. Across the city, the ripple kept moving. A CEO on the West Coast opened her meeting by quoting Amina's line. A college student in Kenya stitched her speech into a short film about dignity. A teacher in Seoul projected it on a classroom wall and asked, "What does quiet power mean to you?" The world had taken her story and made it theirs. That afternoon, a journalist arrived for an interview. "Everyone's calling you the face of graceful leadership," she said, setting up her recorder. Amina smiled politely. "I'm not interested in being a face," she replied. "I'm interested in being a reminder." The journalist leaned forward. "A reminder of what?" Amina looked out the window. "That respect is renewable. You can give it away and still have more." The journalist went silent for a beat, then whispered, "That's beautiful." When the interview ended, Amina walked through the lobby. She passed a janitor polishing the marble floor, the same man who'd been invisible to everyone during the company's darker days. He looked up, smiled. "Good afternoon, Miss Cole." She stopped, smiled back. "Good afternoon, Mr. Davis. Floors look great." His grin widened. "Thank you, ma'am. They shine better when people notice." Her footsteps echoed through the hall, the kind of sound that didn't demand attention but earned it. Upstairs, James was on a call with the regional team. "No, she didn't hire consultants," he was saying. "She just changed the way we talk to each other." He paused, looked out toward Amina's office. "It's wild," he added quietly. "Turns out, respect scales faster than revenue." Hello. At dusk, Amina stood by the window, city lights flickering to life below. Her phone buzzed again, a message from the Leadership Council. "Your talk reached 40 countries. Next year's theme, the sound of change. We'd like you to chair it." She read it, smiled gently, and typed back, "Only if we let others speak, too." The reply came instantly. "That's exactly why we want you." And as the skyline reflected against the glass, Amina whispered to herself, "It's not an echo if it keeps teaching." And for the first time in a long time, she felt still, not because the world had stopped moving, but because it was finally moving in rhythm with something true. The car rolled past fields that looked exactly as she remembered, slow, golden, untangled from ambition. After months of speeches, screens, and glass towers, Amina Cole was finally heading home. Her hometown didn't have billboards or elevators or conference rooms filled with applause. It had porches, quiet roads, and a pace that waited for you to breathe. She hadn't been back in almost 5 years, too busy chasing the future to look where it all began. The driver pulled up to a small white house at the end of a gravel lane. Amina stepped out, heels sinking slightly into the earth. The smell of rain and jasmine drifted in from the garden. On the porch, a woman sat in a rocking chair, reading. "Mama," Amina called softly. Her mother looked up, the kind of smile that folds years into seconds. "You finally came home," she said, setting her book aside. Amina climbed the steps and hugged her. The world went quiet again, the way it only does when you're safe. Inside, the house hadn't changed. Same wooden clock ticking, same photos lining the hallway. One picture stopped Amina in her tracks. A younger version of herself, maybe 10, standing beside her mother at a small school event, holding a handmade sign that read, "Leaders Listen." She smiled. "You kept this?" Her mother nodded. "You wrote it. You just forgot." They sat in the kitchen, tea steaming between them. Her mother's eyes were calm but sharp, always seeing beneath the surface. "I've been watching your interviews," she said. "You sound a lot like your father these days." Amina laughed quietly. "He never stopped teaching, even when no one listened." "That's the point," her mother said. "He led anyway." Amina looked out the window. The sky was heavy with afternoon light, the kind that turns everything soft. She thought about the past year, the misjudgments, the silence, the redemption. All of it came back here, to this table, this lesson, this quiet strength that raised her. "I used to think leadership was about being the loudest voice," she admitted. Her mother smiled knowingly. "And now? Now I think it's about being the calmest one in the storm." Her mother reached across the table, covering her hand. You learned what power is for not to rise above people, but to lift them. For a moment, Amina said nothing. Then she whispered, I just hope I'm doing it right. Her mother's grip tightened. You're doing it real. That's better. Outside, the wind shifted, bending the grass but not breaking it. Amina stood, walked out to the porch, and looked at the horizon wide, endless, forgiving. The city lights were miles away, but somehow she felt closer to everything that mattered. Her phone buzzed again, messages, invites, press requests. She turned it face down on the railing and let the world wait. The quiet didn't feel empty. It felt earned. From behind her, her mother called out, Dinner in 20. Amina smiled, breathing in the scent of the field. Maybe success wasn't about conquering the world after all. Maybe it was about remembering the soil that grew you. And as the sun dipped low behind the trees, Amina whispered to herself, Home, the one place where power means peace. The envelope was small, cream-colored, handwritten. No logo, no title, just her name, Amina Cole. It had been tucked among a stack of conference invitations on her desk, the kind that usually came printed in gold ink. But this one felt different the moment she touched it. She turned it over. The return address read simply, Nairobi. Amina sat down, tore it open carefully. Inside was a folded piece of lined paper and a photograph, a classroom of girls, all wearing blue uniforms, standing in front of a chalkboard. At the center, one girl held a handmade sign that said, Power without noise. Amina smiled before she even began to read. Dear Miss Cole, my name is Nia. I'm 16. I watched your speech on my phone in our school library. It was hard to hear, the signal kept breaking, but the words reached anyway. My teacher said leadership is about speaking loud. But when I saw you stand so calm, I realized maybe it's about standing still until others stop to listen. We started a club called Quiet Leaders. We take turns helping students who are afraid to talk in class find their voice. Some of us are still scared, but we're trying. One day, I want to build something that helps people listen to each other. Maybe a school, maybe a company, maybe both. You showed me it's possible. Thank you for showing us that silence isn't weakness. It's strength in training. With love, Nia M. Amina read it twice, then a third time. Her throat tightened not with sadness, but with recognition. Somewhere across the ocean, a girl she'd never met had turned a moment of quiet into a movement. She looked at the photo again, a dozen bright eyes, fearless smiles, a chalkboard with one word written above the sign, Integrity. Her assistant knocked gently on the door. Miss Cole, you've got that board call in 5. Amina held up the letter. I'll join in 10. He hesitated. Everything all right? She nodded. Better than all right. After he left, Amina took out her notebook, the same one she carried since her first day back. On the last page, she wrote a single line. If it reached one, it was worth it. She pinned Nia's photo to the corkboard above her desk. For a long moment, she just stared at it. The chalk dust, the crooked letters, the raw truth of possibility. Then she smiled, the kind of smile that doesn't perform. It remembered. Outside her window, the city shimmered full of towers, people, and noise. But in her office, there was only stillness. A stillness that spoke louder than applause, richer than profit, deeper than ambition. Amina leaned back, closing her eyes. In her mind, she saw the ripple continue. A classroom of voices, a boardroom of changed hearts, a world where power and kindness shared the same sentence. When she opened her eyes again, she whispered, Keep going, Nia. Keep leading quietly. Oh. Then she turned off the lights, left the office, and let the evening settle in behind her. The sound of legacy, as soft as paper, as strong as truth. Years later, the world had moved on faster, louder, brighter. But some stories don't fade. They settle. They hum quietly in the background of progress, reminding people how it began. In a museum exhibit on leadership and innovation, a glass case held a single artifact. A worn leather notebook, its last page open to the line written in her hand. If it reached one, it was worth it. Visitors paused there longer than anywhere else, not because the words were famous, but because they felt familiar, like something they already knew, but had forgotten to live by. Across the room, a digital screen played snippets of her speech. Amina Cole, Power Without Noise. The room fell silent every time her voice said, Leadership isn't about volume, it's about value. Outside the exhibit, a young woman, maybe 22, adjusted her badge. It read Nia Mwangi, Program Director, Quiet Leaders Initiative. She looked at the notebook through the glass, smiled softly, then turned to lead a group of students through the gallery. Who was she? A boy asked. Nia's smile deepened. She was proof that grace can lead, she said. And that silence isn't empty, it's full of intention. The students followed her to a mural on the far wall. A painting of Amina, standing by a window, city lights behind her, eyes calm, unyielding. Beneath it, a quote read, "When you lead with respect, you leave echoes, not footprints." Nia touched the frame gently. She taught me that leadership doesn't end when you step down, she said. It ends when no one else is standing up, and she made sure we all did. Is Dan. Outside the building, the world looked different now. More women in boardrooms, more collaboration than competition, and a generation that measured influence not by noise, but by impact. Amina's company still thrived, led by a new team shaped in her image. Every Monday, they began their meetings with a single moment of silence, not ceremonial, but intentional. A reminder that listening built everything that followed. Somewhere in a quiet town far from the skyline, a woman in her late 60s tended to her garden. A notebook rested beside her teacup, open to a blank page. The breeze carried the sound of laughter from a nearby school, young voices, confident, unafraid. Amina looked up from her garden and smiled. She didn't need to be remembered to feel fulfilled. The world she left behind was already speaking in her language. She whispered to the wind, still growing. "Yeah." The camera would have pulled back then. From her garden, to the town, to the skyline, to the world that kept echoing her words. No soundtrack, just key it. Because some stories end without applause. They end with peace, and when history writes about power, it may forget the noise, but it will always remember the silence that changed everything.